All right, I'll start it off, Rick, and we'll jump in together.
Sounds good.
A couple of points I want to make from earlier today and leading into this is one, we talked about the makeup of your team. You can put all the practices and things on paper you want, but these things get brought to life by the team that you have put in place. And I don't know, in my 40 plus years of doing this work, that there's ever been a more critical element of who you have doing the work as much as what the work is. This has got to be something that people want to do, that people have a feel for, an innate talent for, as well as life experience, as well as understanding. In our breakout rooms, someone was talking about the overwhelming nature of doing this kind of work. And you need to have people on your team who understand all those things and how to keep themselves safe and also how to keep themselves sane. And so it became really clear to me early on that Rick Harris was that guy in our office, and therefore became the lead investigator for our witness protection programs. And one of the points that Rick made to me a little bit earlier this week is the idea that threat assessment is not just this thing on the side that you do when you get to that on the form. Threat assessment is the totality of everything that occurs, that has occurred, and that you need to take into account when coming up with a plan to keep these people safe. So, Rick, and the whole concept of witness protection practices, we talked about the 3 levels of intervention that include tactical and trauma-informed and lifestyle change. However, it's not the entire game plan because it all has to be predicated on a threat assessment, right?
Correct. I think there's 2 things I'd like to cover. I think the most important thing, or what allows us to have success, is that our program statewide is covered by a state statute that allows us to protect discussions that are had when it comes to safety planning and the threat assessment. And what I mean by that, part of our statute, it covers the confidentiality. And one of the things that I initially do when I first sit down and I talk to a victim and or witness where we've determined there's a concern for their safety is I make sure that it's very clear to them that even though I am a part of the Denver District Attorney's office, I'm separate from the prosecution of it, and that anything that they say to me or convey to me is protected by statute and it's confidential. And that's a step or an opening of a door that allows them to, hopefully as we move forward, to confide in me so I can successfully evaluate the threat itself and how I can help protect them moving forward.
Well, that makes all kinds of sense. So this all starts with the beginnings of when you do your social history, right?
Correct. We sit down, we talk. Yes.
What parts of that social history start jumping out at you as the elements of your threat assessment?
Usually victims and witnesses are insiders. So the goal itself is to understand the level of the relationship or any relationship, the intimacy part and or any kind of contact or relationship that they may have, and have them open up and give us inside information so as we can properly assess the defendant's capability, resources that may be available, what kind of history they have. And the things we look for is financial resources, technology resources, unfortunately, a criminal history where they're predisposed to violence. those are the things when we sit down and we initially talk that we want to consider and take into consideration moving forward. How they socialize, limitations on where and when where and when and how they can socialize. And I think one of the things that was brought out in the previous session is that we want to make sure if they are, I think the word we use is geographically undesirable, GU. If that defendant and or suspect has the ability to reach outside of the end of the block, and what kind of resources they have. And unfortunately, with the gang nexus piece of it, if that's something that's in play, then we recognize that their reach may be a little bit greater than what we maybe anticipate just at the end of the block, but the level of reach that they may have throughout the state and maybe even across the nation.
I've heard you say in the past that threat assessment, witness protection is an art, not a science. Would you talk a little bit more about how you came to that fact? I'm going to call it a fact.
Sure. I think that unfortunately we all, I mean, there could be 100 scenarios that we could prepare for. And we all have experienced our own life experiences and experiences that come through the job. And we like to think that we have the ability to prepare for most of the things that come our way. Unfortunately, when you're dealing with human nature and witness protection, you could prepare for 100 different scenarios. And unfortunately, it's the 102 scenario that you're presented with. And so you have to be able to have a feel and be able to adjust and adapt. And because if not, you could easily get derailed when safety planning. And because of human nature, they're always going to do something that you don't expect and that you probably haven't thought out or prepared for. And what separates success from failure is having the ability to adjust on the fly.
Yeah. And in real time, right? So
in real time.
Is it not your original line that witness protection Friday night is Monday morning for you?
Friday night is definitely Monday morning for me.
Yeah.
Usually when things pop off, it's as we get closer to the weekend and everybody's winding down, and unfortunately we're winding up.
Yeah. So a lot of this comes out of your work that you do on the front end. That's a social history gathering. That sounds like a social worker's job, and I don't think that's what it says on your badge.
No, I think, and it's been brought up during this convening, there's a lot of things, there's a lot of moving parts. And one of the things is that you're, unfortunately, in a lot of our cases, especially those that are gang related, those cases that are in underserved communities. The unfortunate thing is that there's not a lot of trust between law enforcement and those communities. Unfortunately, unfortunately, because there's a lack of trust, there's not a lot of buy-in initially. So you have to make sure that, one, that if you commit to something, you have the ability to follow through. You have to let them know that at any time when they need you, not just when we need something from them, you're going to be available to them or accessible to them. And you have to develop a rapport that will allow them to gradually trust. And I always say this, and I apologize for anyone that's a prosecutor. I always start my conversation off with this. You got to do what's best for you and your family. I want you to participate because I think that there should be natural consequences. At the end of the day, though, I want you to do what's best for you and your family. And I have to earn your trust because I know that you're just not going to come in and surrender to me or surrender your trust to me. So let me do my job. And if at any particular point I fail or I don't come through or you perceive that I'm not successful, then you can make your decision based on that information. But give me the opportunity And I don't tell them, give me the opportunity to fail. I say, give me the opportunity to succeed. And then we can work through this, and I'll help you navigate through what's a difficult process, especially based on historical interactions with the criminal justice system and those communities.
Rick, in particular, when what might be getting in the way, or one of the barriers that these people have in their lives, whether it's male or female, or is substance abuse and shortcomings in their life, successes up to the point that we got involved with them. How do they respond in general, and what do you do? What's your approach where you say, hi, I'm from the government and I'm here to help?
I think it's important that once you develop the trust and you're able to navigate through some of the concerns or roadblocks that can occur, I think it's important that you are always accessible. And I tell people all the time, I'm a 24/7 guy. I mean, that's partly true. I don't do well in the mornings, but I am a 24/7 guy, and that you can reach out and call me at any particular point in time. And it works. I mean, because a lot of the concerns with anyone that's participating or that we're asking to participate in the criminal justice system is that there's a gap. I heard from them initially, and I haven't heard from them until now that we're ready to go to trial. And unfortunately or fortunately, life continues on. And you want to get an idea as to what their needs are, what some of the obstacles may be, whether it's drug or alcohol abuse. One of the big things now is mental health, making sure that on some level that they're accommodated, if that's possible. Plug them into resources outside of what maybe your office is capable of doing, and help facilitate, be a facilitator. And it's very interesting, especially with my background, seeing the response that people have when you're helping facilitate, and that you're accessible.
Yeah. So when you have this big trough of information, and now you're coming up with trying to come up with a plan that will keep them or help them keep themselves safe going forward, what goes into that plan? How does that plan, how do you cull down from the social history into an actual plan for safety?
Well, we always talk about social media, their presence on social media. I prefer that they step away. So I'm always asking them to step away from it, even if it's just for 6 months or so. That's huge, because there's so many things that make them vulnerable through social media. We discuss situational awareness, be aware of your surroundings, how to do that, how to drive in your mirrors. We talk about that at great length. Not being a creature of habit, breaking up your routine, anything that will help break up your routine. If you have a Saturday morning appointment with Pilates at a particular location, maybe go to a different location or change the time. Reaching out to the schools. We've learned over time that people are most vulnerable when they are destination bound, and the defendant and or suspects has information as to that destination, and that includes court, because they know that at some particular point in time, they're going to be there and you're going to be there. So we make sure that they take precautions when it comes to being predictable and falling into a routine. Any type of technology, that's huge now. Your phone, that the handheld computer that all of us carry, making them or teaching them or coaching them of what that is capable of, and that's tracking them through all different kind of ways on that phone. Electronics in their car, if they have a car that's new, the idea of that being able to be the handheld computer, the phone being able to plug into your car. Most of us experience that because when we get in or we're talking to them, there's a transition from going from talking on that handheld phone or that handheld computer to entering a car and all of a sudden coming across their radio or their stereo speakers in their cars. Electronics in the house, all those things we attempt to educate them moving forward as to what makes them vulnerable and what people can access. We talk about things that identify them, not just their cars, where they live, addresses, phones. The unfortunate thing is most of us order pizza. And when we do that, when we call your local pizzeria, the first thing they see is your phone number, and they pick up the phone and they call you or identify you by name. And then they ask you or tell you what they think that you should be ordering because you've ordered it in the past. The local things like the local grease monkey when you go to have your car done. We've learned that defendants or suspect are very skilled in the fact of, hey, I just had my car serviced. I'm not sure you have my correct information. Here's my phone number. Can you tell me, we just brought our car in. Can you let me know if you have our correct phone number and address? And then that information is given. And so at the end of the day, we attempt to coach them through or educate them on how vulnerable they can be just through our day-to-day activities.
Yeah, that makes sense. Once upon a time, the powers that be, the professionals in this area, used to discuss what are the static factors, things like history of violence, gender, age, those kinds of things, with what are the dynamic factors that are changeable and can fluctuate. And those are behavioral and social and attitudinal, financial, those kinds of things. When you have that across an entire person's life, or as we've had many times, or reviews had many times, an entire family's life, how do you build in the ability to make that change on a dime that you were talking about earlier? What are the things you do so that you're ready to shift, to change your approach because they threw you a curveball? Your own client threw you a curveball.
Unfortunately, that happens more often than not. And the thing that we attempt to do, or we like to do based on information that we've obtained up to that particular point, is have the ability to forecast. And even though we do get blindsided occasionally, for me, I look at witness protection sometimes, my historical references, like a dope deal, is that you have to always be prepared for the unexpected. And that's very true with the same thing with witness protection. The biggest problem that we have in families and getting a family protected or making sure that they're safe is usually teenage children, because they don't want to surrender or let loose of social media and I think tagging or updating or Snapchatting and Facebooking everything that they do, even if it's just to go get a hamburger at McDonald's. They're always giving off their location and what they're doing. And that's really the most difficult piece. Those are the things when we do stumble and it becomes unpredictable. It's because it's a breakdown in the family where a juvenile or teenager is actively involved after being requested not to be. And that's usually when we have problems or we struggle.
Yeah. I know we're going to focus mostly throughout the 2 days on gangs and guns and those kinds of things. But I want to take a moment and let you give us some thoughts about the unique challenges that we see in human trafficking cases.
Though those cases become complicated because one, the structure unfortunately, the structure of how human trafficking is set up, and the fact that you're usually dealing with young people that probably have been on some level, I hate to use the word taken care of, but there is some structure. And so they become dependent on that, what I don't think we would call it structure, but that lifestyle, and taking them out of that environment and attempting to make them safe or secure they don't understand that, or it's hard for them to wrap their head around, because the individuals or people that have done that are the people, unfortunately, that we're attempting to prosecute or build a case against. So that's a very complicated piece. We don't have. We've done some very unique things and learned some very valuable lessons. We've had cases where we've removed them out of that environment, unfortunately put them in hotels. And the sad thing or the tragic thing is that because we removed that structure from them, they went back to work and just kept the proceeds. And so we've learned very valuable lessons in putting them in houses or safe houses, taking them away from that environment, where we put them in safe houses where they've gone and partied like rock stars and brought that environment into those settings. So our biggest thing now is when we do these sort of things and we're in the intake process, is to make sure that we're educating them, that it's very clear to them what is expected of them. And if not, if they're unable or incapable of following through or making sure that they're safe, then unfortunately we will push that declination form I think you referred to earlier in front of them and said there's nothing there. Although there's a lot of things we can do, there's nothing we can do until you decide you want to help yourself be safe.
So that's a pretty universal phrase you use right there. All of our clients need to decide that they want to be safe and participate.
Very
Otherwise,
true.
we're barking up a pretty weak tree.
And we have paperwork that's one of the things during the intake process that we slide in front of them, that our help, not the prosecution side, I want to make that very clear. Our help is definitely based on the fact that here's a list of things that you need to do. And it's very specific about being crime free, or not being involved or getting yourself into situations that you can't get out of. Your participation in the prosecution of the case. There's about 10 or 12 items on that list that they have to check off. And we make it very clear that if at any particular point in time any of this breaks down, that you can be dismissed from the program. The good news is, even though we have dismissed people from the program here at the Denver District Attorney's Office, we've always circled back and brought them back in, because we recognize that the best practice is still to make sure that they are safe.
I think it was you who put the policy in place that we never close a case. We may have an inactive case, but it's not closed and put away in the file drawer, correct?
Correct. We kind of label them as open inactive or open active. So and a lot of our cases circle back down the road, because one of the things that we've learned, unfortunately, through experience, is that defendants and suspects now recognize that time is on their side. And so even though we have done everything that we could possibly do to accommodate the victim and or witness, we have learned that at times the suspects and defendants have circled back. And so that case it moves from being open inactive to open and active. And our services, whatever services that are needed at that particular point in time, are provided.
Yeah, same story, different topic. Again, not the primary focus, but I want to at least touch on it. What are the unique aspects of doing these in domestic violence cases?
Well, the struggle in any domestic violence case, which I'm sure everybody is aware of, is that unfortunately you have a defendant and or suspect that is more than likely a provider. So that's an obstacle you will face, because now you're talking about the victim and or the victim's family are wondering financially how they're going to navigate through all of this. Of course, we talked about this in our breakout session. The first phone call that most defendants make or suspects make once they land in jail is to reach out to the victim and attempt to attempt to play that card, woe me. Everybody understands the language. It was an accident. It's that cycle of violence. And so you want to make sure that they're aware of that and prepare them for that. Like everyone else, we attempt to monitor jail calls so we can have an active idea in real time what's being said, finances, what their capabilities are, and gain cases of course.
I think, Rick, did you freeze up or did I freeze up?
I think he froze up because I still hear you, but I think he. Oh wait, is he back?
Rick, are you back yet?
Well, as they try and get that sorted out.
Yeah, let me pick up the ball and run a little bit.
I had a couple of quick questions, Steve.
Go ahead.
I thought we could open it up. This is really fascinating. Just somebody who does this and sort of from the inside. But these are like concrete questions. Uh-oh, am I frozen now?
No, but I've given Rick my computer screen, John.
Oh, good. You guys are back. All right, go ahead. The couple of quick questions I had, like, how do the cases come to you? Do you do a threat assessment on every case? And what is a credible threat?
The short answer is I would like to do a threat assessment on every case. Unfortunately, that we don't have the resources. Usually the cases come to us. There's a number of different ways. There are times when we're right on the front end of it, where we receive the information in real time when it happens on the streets or from the Denver Police Department. Their victim advocate unit or the Denver Police Department's victim advocate unit will call us out or bring us in immediately. And then I'm able to get on board from the beginning until the end. Some other times when it comes to the office, an investigator that's assigned to the case and or a victim advocate that's assigned to the case will hear things or information will come to them and they will say, we think we need to get Rick involved. And so I'll come in and we'll discuss safety planning and discuss the concerns or what they feel the threat is. I always think that if a number of different things, if there's a historical reference to where you can go back and you look back and you can see that there historically this person has offended, especially in domestic violence cases. There's been a history of domestic violence. Then that always puts them on the radar, puts us, alerts us, and we get involved very quickly. So there's a number of different ways. We also have community-based programs reach out to us because they'll be involved in some in a community-based program, and a counselor or someone there will say, wow, this is bigger than we thought, and they'll reach out to our office and reach out to me as well. So there's a number of different ways that a case will come to our attention, and we don't push it or send anyone away unless we feel comfortable enough that there isn't an imminent threat, a credible threat, or there's other things going on that we can't help with, which is very rare.
And what is a credible threat? Like, I even hate to say it. You have a form that you guys use that guides what you ask and things like that. But I know it's not just the form, right? Or a score. It's like your experience. It's a whole bunch of different things. But what do you do? And how do you tell someone, hey, this isn't a credible threat, you're okay? I mean, I would be terrified to say that.
No, and we don't. We attempt to figure out if they're just afraid or if there's been steps taken toward that threat. And so what we a lot of times we get cases where people are just afraid and they have good reason to be afraid. And so at that particular point in time, we're communicating with them, basically monitoring the situation because it could change at any time. And we recognize that. So we never send them away saying, no, you haven't reached the point yet to where I should be involved. we always say, let's continue to monitor. And I always put it back on them. I said, you tell me what you think it would take to make you feel safe. And that's always a good tool to use, because they'll tell you exactly. And then you're able to kind of have an assessment of okay, here's what's really happening. Usually when I do that and I think, oh, we're kind of on the edge, and they'll give me some historical information, then I'm thinking you're perfect for what we need to do moving forward. And the good news is that it can mean something as little as safety planning. Here's what I'd like for you to do moving forward. And if things should escalate, here's what I want you to do if that occurs, to relocation, whether it's temporary, help facilitating getting a camera or alarm system. I think in my time here in this position, I think we've done everything from that to buying cars to successfully changing the identity of someone, not getting much help from the feds, but thank you anyway. But at the end of the day, we've been, I want to knock on wood, I'm very superstitious. We've been tremendously successful, and we've made a lot of mistakes, or we've stumbled quite a bit, getting to the point that I think that we do a decent job. There's always room for improvement, a decent job at making sure and ensuring that people are safe. So.
Awesome.
John, you got some more?
No, you go ahead. I didn't want to interrupt, but I would encourage people, if they have specific questions, because we have this opportunity. It's Rick Harris. It's reading Julie Brackley right now, but it's Rick who has this sort of wealth of information. So if people have any, just chat your questions. But Steve, you go ahead.
All right, Rick, I've got a list that I've collected over the years of things that you've taught me or things that you've expressed are key to our approach to witness protection. I'm going to throw some of them out. You've spoken about some of them already, so we can skip over those. But let's start with the personal background of both the victim and the suspect. And your point is everyone is capable of harm, and nothing that we find out in this collection of information about either offender or victim should be dismissed out of hand.
Definitely.
Correct?
Yes, absolutely. I'll give you a case, and I'll make it very short. And Steve, you'll remember this case. One of the things that had happened in this case, where a woman was the victim of domestic violence, the bad guy or the suspect or the defendant he did ridiculous things. He broke into her house, he held her hostage, held her at gunpoint, stole her dogs, did a lot of different things. And there was a history of these things happening where we were continuously charging him with these crimes. One of the things that was absent in all this is every time they arrested him, he had large sums of money on him. He had anywhere from $5,000, $10,000, $20,000 cash. And when they brought me in and started discussing their concerns for his safety, I said, and I would familiarize myself with the case, I said, why does he have these large sums of money on him every time he's arrested? And I'm talking about large sums of money. My experience, I was fortunate enough to work dope at one particular point in time. He's dealing, and he's not a bottom level guy. He has a tremendous amount of money, which means he has resources, and he did. We found out later as we moved forward that he was a lieutenant or something like that in the cartel. And so it's that type of information as you familiarize with your case, and I familiarize myself with all the cases that I'm involved with, you pick up little things that give you hints as to what this person is capable of, what they've done, even as simple as a cruelty to animal case. Well, what is that case? What does that mean to me, a cruelty to animal case for him? Well, he stole their puppies and took them, held them for ransom. He was charged with cruelty to animals, but it meant that not only is he not a nice guy, but he has the potential to escalate. And those of us that are involved in cruelty to animal cases know that that's usually a block, a stepping stone for people to escalate and do uglier things. So those were things that gave me an indication. Not only was this guy dangerous, but not just dangerous, but also had some issues, some other issues that I don't think I can say since this is being recorded.
Rick, along those same lines, one of your lines is that the offender or the offender's network, if they have the capacity, the resources, or the connections to carry out harm.
Always. If someone, one, plugged in financially, meaning that they are financially capable, then they can do almost anything. And that's something that gets lost in translation. We all know that money talks. So at the end of the day, they can do things like purchase burner phones and tape them to the bumper of cars and track people that way. Or if they're technology savvy, or they know someone that's technology savvy, they can access information. There's a lot of things and a lot of sites that are done in real time, whether it's insurance sites, whether it's shopping sites that are done in real time. And so if you have those type of resources, or you're capable of having those type of resources, then you can almost find or do harm to anybody. And so that's why we encourage people when they come into the program to really shrink their internet presence, because, and I've always said this is another Rickism since Steve is throwing them out. I've always believed that the one most committed wins. And so at the end of the day, if the defendant or the suspect is out working your team, and they can, and they will, if they're out working your team, then you're always going to be catching up. And that's unfortunate. So we have to be on our end, have the ability to forecast and figure out what is truly this person capable of. And that's when you're interviewing and you're intaking, your advocate is sitting across and they say, oh, he does IT for IBM. That's a clue. He does IT for, I don't know what the new things is. What is it? X or whatever, or he works for X, which I believe used to be Twitter. That's a clue. He knows this particular person, or he hangs out with this, or even though he's not in a gang, I know that his friend Junebug is in a gang. Those are things that really sometimes get lost in translation that we fail to pick up on, that gives them access.
Yeah, perfectly along those lines, Rick. How has it been when a cartel is known to be involved? How is that different? What does it require different from you?
Well, first of all, it requires me reaching out to a lot of different resources. The intelligence piece is really huge when it comes to working cases that they have cartel ties. You want to make sure you know who you're dealing with, what their reach is, whose radar they're on, and you'll be surprised that the sharing of information between law enforcement isn't what I'd like for it to be. We tend to hoard that information, and so that's why having a connection with we have a connection with the Denver. Well, I have a connection probably with most anybody because I'm old. I've unfortunately been doing this for 42 years, so I have a lot of resources, and that has helped me or benefit me. But the reality of it is that I hate to use the word try. I mirror the cartel. I want to gather as much information as I possibly can gather as they would be doing for me. And there's layers, and you have to figure out where the buck stops in that layer. The more you go up, the more you realize the significance and the danger an individual or a person is in. If it stops at a particular point in time, it's just Rick Harris on the block, upset at this particular thing, or I've committed this ugly domestic violence crime, but it's just me, it's on my shoulders, then I understand where the buck stops there as well. The cartel involvement is usually when you're messing with their money, you're affecting an earner or a mule. That's the sort of thing that they get involved in or they take very seriously. Now, it doesn't mean they won't sanction someone else to do something because they don't want me as one of their lieutenants upset, but it means for the most part they're hands off and they're not going to dedicate any money or resources to it.
One of your other Rickisms you just mentioned, and that is thinking like the defendant. What would I do?
Well, yes. And if you can't do that, a lot of witness protection I've learned, and I think what helped prepare me for it was the dope game when I was at a task force. A lot of things that happen in witness protection are truly in the gray area. And if you're not, or you're uncomfortable operating in the gray area, if you can't think outside the box, if there's something black, it has to be black and white for you, and you know where the lines are, then you're going to struggle. Unfortunately, I shouldn't confess this. Unfortunately, I've learned to operate in the gray area. The lines have always been blurred for me in my law enforcement career. Not that I did anything criminal, but I just wanted to make sure I was thinking like the person that I was up against, the defendant, the suspect. Even on the street as a beat cop, I knew where to go. I knew where people hung out. I knew what they were doing when they were hanging out. Witness protection is a lot like that. You have to be able to say, well, what's in it? What do I need to do? What would I do? And once you start going down that path, although a very dark one, you're going to be able to keep ahead of the suspect and or defendant, and you won't be caught off guard as much if you're able to do that. What would I do? What's the significance of this particular incident? What's the significance of this? What's the significance of that? And be able to think outside the box, and you're going to have a tremendous amount of success keeping your victims and witnesses safe and being able to stay ahead of all that.
You kind of alluded to this when you were talking about young people in the family, but talk just a little bit about your assessment of the weakest link in the plan.
Well, I hate these cliches. You're only as strong as your weakest link. And so if you're able to identify your weakest link, unfortunately, it's usually young people. They don't want to surrender social media. And usually, especially in gang situations, usually they have something, or they have some affiliation or association with the gang. At some particular point in time, there was a connection of some sort, especially with young females. Let me be careful how I say this. They go back and forth. And so you never know. You don't ever know who the Judas is in your clan, but you just don't know who's talking to who. I'm a big person. If you've talked to one person, you've told 5 too many. So you really have to be able to monitor, and that's difficult for parents, and figuring out how to do that successfully without also alienating your child, but hopefully them understanding the significance and the importance of dialing down some of their activity.
Yeah, I think we're coming to the end of the time that John allowed for us. I could stay on the phone and talk to you about this all day, but let's talk a little bit on the way out about those things that are most unique. And in this particular case is, okay, the DA's office finished with them. What do you do as a witness protection professional post-sentencing that's different than what the prosecution team does when they finish the case?
Stay in touch. I'll do periodic. I immediately let them know, even though your case is done, you can still call me, access me. If there's any resources that you may need moving down the line, I'll make them available to you. I don't have the luxury, and I understand why. There's a lot of cases. And so prosecutors are on to the next case. They're on to the next case. They're on to the next case. My job allows me to stay plugged in as long as they wish, and be accessible and available. Refer them to community-based programs, programs that are even in our own office, and make those programs accessible to them, and make sure that they don't feel that abandoned, that we got what we needed, whatever that may be, and now we've moved on. So my job is to do that, to follow up, to make sure, how you doing? Do you need anything? Is everything okay? Are you being safe? And so that I think goes a long way. One of the things that we're attempting to do now, implement here at the DA's office, is have a full-time dedicated victim advocate to the program, which I think will be huge, because the advocates that are involved in the cases that are being prosecuted, they're on to the next case. It unfortunately that it's shark teeth. You know, you lose one and one replaces the other one that's lost in 7 minutes. And so I understand why they have to move on. I would like to create a program or environment where the advocate is touching base with them. There's not the gap. And even afterwards, they don't feel that they were used or taken. You just needed me for this. And you've heard that we've heard that, and we've probably heard it today. And so I want to make sure that there's buy-in, and that there hopefully isn't a next time, or if they can help facilitate something else or someone else that has been victimized, they can do that, and we can have success moving forward, and people will start to trust the criminal justice system again. Not sure they ever did, but hopefully, fingers crossed.
And John's going to throw us out, but in the final
Thanks,
thing,
Go ahead.
in the final thing is, what is it about the post-sentencing, post-case that gives you particular pause about our protected parties being hurt? I've heard you describe it as the defendant gets a long sentence and they're sitting there with lots of time on their hands.
That's always been my biggest nightmare, is that we all return back to our lives, other cases, more cases, and that in some way they don't get forgotten. But, and I hate to use the word but they do. And unfortunately, and I've said this to you, Steve, on a number of different occasions, if you sentence me to 10 years, all I'm going to think about during that 10 years is how I can get my pound of flesh. And I'm going to talk to people that are going to consult me, advise me. They're going to say stupid things. If you want your case to go away, your victim has to go away. That's jailhouse language. And so my biggest fear always has been is that one day that person is going to cycle out, unless they've done something horrific and they're in jail forever. And I'll speed it up, John. But at one particular point in time, they're going to get out. And I don't think we prepare them for that, our victims for that, is that one day, whether it's 6 months, 18 months, whatever, 10 years, 5 years, that individual is going to get out. And while they're in jail, they're going to receive a jailhouse education, and they're going to get advised, and they're going to be consulted. And at the end of the day, like I said, I lose sleep at night fearing that one day somebody's going to circle back and we weren't there, or there was a disconnect for whatever reason. And so that's my biggest concern. That's what keeps me up at night. That and a puppy.
I hear you. All right, John, we're giving it back to you.
All right. Well, I don't want to rush you, because I love listening to this. I'm surprised there aren't more questions, because I have one more. And so, Rick, you said early on, like, prosecutors may not like this, but I talk to people about it. What's going to keep you safe? What you got to make decisions about you and your family and things like that. If someone is not going to testify, do you still work with them?
The short answer is yes. And the reason being is because I think by having that unconditional peace, there is a chance that they'll buy back in. And so I don't just say, oh, you're not going to testify? I'm out. I'll say, here's what I'd like to do for you. The threat is real. I want you to recognize that it's real. And then I'm going to do everything that I can do to help you. And if they are accepting of that, then as we move forward, I'm going to encourage them, excuse me, I'm going to encourage them to participate, to get back in, to plug back in, and show them how they can do that and be successful in doing so.
And John, what we've seen is, because a witness says, I'm not going to testify, they're still perceived as a threat to the defendant because of exactly that. They may change their mind. Somewhere down the road, they may talk to someone and reveal a piece of evidence. So the threat doesn't lighten up necessarily the way we think it might.
Yeah, no, definitely. We got 2 more slides. I just want to alert to people, because I think you guys are, just listening to you two, you're a tremendous resource. You do have a threat assessment tool, and I think, Holly, have we shared that in the tools that we've sent out to participants, or am I wrong about that?
We have not shared this one yet, but we will send it in our follow-up.
And it's great to have a tool, but I don't think just having a tool is going to make you a witness protection expert. You really need, I feel like, Steve, Rick, people like that to help you figure out, because it's not just about answers on paper. We use danger assessments in domestic violence all the time. And if you just count the score up, you might miss a lot. You might think there's a big threat here when there isn't. There's no threat here when there really is. And so it's a lot more than just what's on a piece of paper, but that is available. And then the other one, I think, is a sample agreement for folks that, is that the next slide? For
Yes,
folks,
that's it.
yeah, for folks who participate in your program. And so that's also something we'll share with everybody. But if you need help with that, reach out to us, and then we can maybe arrange for some additional technical assistance from Rick and Steve and Julie on how we do that. So I don't want to overwhelm these guys, but they have shared their contact information. And I know they would help anybody who reaches out, but I want to be fair and respectful because I know they're super busy. But anyway, those were the last things we wanted to share.
I did see someone put up in the chat something referencing Dr. Campbell. She is a wizard at assessments. And if you can get a hold of her materials, it will help you.
Oh, Cynthia, you're muted.
Oh,
Cynthia,
me? No,
you're muted. Cynthia, you're still muted. Sorry.
I'm muted?
No.
I am.
Oh,
I'm
okay.
sorry. Yeah, I'm sorry. That was Andrew Campbell's contact info for his research and consulting contact information. But yeah, Jackie Campbell's danger assessment is, the bomb. And so we got to use it with victims wherever and whenever we can to help inform them of the level of risk and what to do in response.
Yeah, I think John's point, which was excellent, is don't just use that.
Right.
You got to use all these other skill sets and experiences. And as Rick said, the artistic side of it, not the scientific side of it.
Yeah, I mean, I think a marriage, for structured professional judgment, you want to use, sort of the ODERA or SARA or the HCR 20 version 3 most recently, just to get a sense of how dangerous this person is, maybe even over above, sort of the seat of the pants stuff. But I think all of it has to combine together.
Yeah. All right. So thank you guys. This was terrific. We are going to break out into our groups, and we'll probably have like 30 some minutes before we come back and finish for the day. So we're breaking out. Goodbye and let people go. The one thing I wanted to let folks know, thank you all for attending and great participation today in those breakout groups. We've learned some interesting facts and lessons, and there's an evaluation that was just chatted, so please take time to fill out the evaluation. We're going to start again tomorrow at 12:30, I believe, and we should end around 3:45 with a quick wrap up tomorrow as well. The one thing I wanted to just mention as we go out the door, because it was relevant to the last breakout group, was that there is a bill in Congress that has, I think, about 17 co-sponsors, both Democrat and Republican. The lead sponsor is Congressman Kwesi Mfume out of Maryland. And it is I wrote it down here somewhere. Here it is. The Witness Security and Protection Grant Program Act of 2023. It's just a bill. This has not become law. but the idea is for Congress to provide competitive grants to state, local, and tribal governments to create a witness protection and assistance program. It would also require creation of best practices for witness protection. And it is not for all crimes. It is specifically for homicide, serious violent felonies, serious drug offenses, gang and organized crime offenses. So it is not for domestic violence, probably because domestic violence has dedicated funding from the federal government and the Department of Justice's Office on Violence Against Women. If anybody wants, we can chat out the link to that law, or that bill rather. It is not a law. If anybody's interested in it, as we were learning in our breakout session, not everybody feels like they have the resources to help, even though there are other ways to do that when you don't have dedicated resources. But dedicated resources would be helpful. So we'll share that. We're also going to share the witness protection tool that Steve and Rick were talking about, and their sample participation agreement. And if anybody wants to connect with anybody, just let us know. We will share all the contact information as well. If there's nothing else, I'm going to let people go. Thank you so much for attending and participating. We hope to see you tomorrow as well.